So here with their analysis is first, Davis Yountz, a former military officer and military defense attorney, and John Vick, the executive director of Concerned Veterans for America. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Riley.
So,
good evening, Riley.
I want to start with you, Davis, actually, because everything's up in the air. It's all very fluid. We're almost a full 4 years into this battle, which is heartbreaking to see unfold. And President Trump is moving mountains right now, trying to get to a peace deal. So I want to know, what is your current assessment of the efforts from the Trump administration to end this conflict once and for all?
I am optimistic for two reasons. We saw Vladimir Putin's posturing after his one-on-one meeting with Trump in Alaska did two things. He used language like trustworthy, and it also appears like he's publicly agreeing to some sort of security agreement as long as we don't title it NATO. So the fact that President Putin is praising President Trump's efforts, is using language like trustworthy, and is willing to give up at least some type of a security guarantee and recognize that for Ukraine, I think those are huge positive steps in the right direction that at least leave options on the table for a negotiated outcome.
Very interesting. Now, John, turning to you, in your expertise, what is your assessment of the ongoing efforts from President Trump, and do you think they will be effective in the end?
No, I think it's very encouraging. Obviously, we see that Russia has much more of an appetite for negotiating terms of peace. I mean, at the end of the day, this war's been going on for 3.5 years, right? If total victory was an option for either side, we would not be having these negotiations now. This wouldn't be a conversation. So I think it's very encouraging to see Russia coming to the table, and Ukraine as well. I mean, a recent Gallup poll just recently had 69% of Ukrainians desiring peace now. Only 24% wanted to continue the fight at any cost. So to Secretary Rubio's point that you played earlier, peace negotiations like this, pretty much everybody has to give up something, but that is, worth the cost to stop the bloodshed. I mean, more blood in the dirt is not going to make things better for Russia or Ukraine.
Certainly not. And it's hard to get the exact numbers in the fog of war, but some estimates say that more than 1 million people between both countries have been killed, which is just tragic. And President Trump doesn't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm sure neither of you do. But sometimes these things happen. And I just want to look ahead to this peace deal. Obviously, Putin and Zelensky have different terms on their mind, and they'll have to give something up. But this whole negotiation process is really about one underlying question. I want to start with you, John, and then Davis would like your thoughts too. What is it, John, that you think Russia is really fighting for in this war?
Yeah, well, we mentioned the industrial swaths of industrial land to the east of Ukraine. That's very important strategically. I think also at the end of the day, I guess the prospect of NATO membership for Ukraine, Russia has long viewed as a threat. Ukraine has for a long time been a source of strategic depth, both for the NATO alliance and for Russia. So the fact that Russia is even entertaining the idea of something like Article 5 security guarantees is very intriguing to me. And I would say, too, I think that the reason why that conversation is even in the ether right now is because you've seen European allies stepping up in terms of taking more charge of their own regional security, so that you don't have this option of there's no security guarantee conversation, or it's the U.S. nuclear umbrella for Ukraine. There are things in the middle now, and so the Trump administration has fought hard to advance this conversation about flexible security guarantees throughout the region. I think it's going to be very intriguing to see how it shakes out.
Okay, interesting. Now, Davis, to you, would you agree with John's assessment, and would you like to add anything to it?
No, I think that's a great assessment, and I think that's right. The security guarantee is so important because it is a middle ground. It doesn't look like a loss for Putin to compromise on this as long as it doesn't have the NATO label, and that's powerful. And we have to understand that. To the Russian people, to former citizens of the Soviet Union, NATO is the enemy. So the idea that we can come up with a compromise or we don't have it under that umbrella is a great stepping point. I think we're going to see, as details emerge from ongoing meetings, we're going to see more areas where there's potential for compromise. And also this idea of territorial swaps have come up.
Yes.
Russia has controlled the Crimea since 2014. I really don't think that's going to be something they're going to stop fighting over or give up. That's historically been Russian territory. It was only part of Ukraine when Ukraine was a satellite state of the Soviet Union. So I think that's going to be key to look at. And then there's a real question of what nuclear facilities as well as minerals and industrial facilities are going to be part of an exchange. And that really is the Donetsk, the Luhansk, and that Donbas region. How much of that will Russia retain? They have control of most of it now. I don't think they're going to keep all of it, certainly not if they're going to get Crimea and some sort of a land bridge to Crimea.
Understood. Then following up on that note, and then I do want to hear John's thoughts about this question. This calls for a lot of speculation, but I do want to sort of get your argument, Davis. So when it comes to NATO and protecting Ukraine in general, do you believe the U.S. should have any role at all in protecting Ukraine moving forward?
You know, I think that's an extremely difficult question. My default position on that is it's essentially a European question and a European problem. I think if that is a necessary requirement of peace at this point, as long as there's an end state that makes sense and is in America's best interest so that we can have a peaceful trade with Russia and other European nations, I think that's a possibility. But that's a very, very difficult question. And it does raise questions about the need and the necessity of NATO anyway. But fortunately, President Trump's already been moving us in that direction. During his first term and again during this term, he has gotten European nations to actually pay their own way when it comes to their defense, and I think that's part of it. So I think there's some interesting long-term strategic implications from how this is negotiated that may put the United States in a better position to prioritize our own border and our own security and force European allies to step up and actually be more responsible for their own security as well as Ukraine's.
Very interesting you say that. And part of the reason I ask is given the last 20 years of U.S. foreign policy craft and foreign policy making, because we've been involved in so many different conflicts at this point, Davis, directly or indirectly. It's cost us human life, it's cost us precious resources and time and trillions of dollars. And I would hate to see us sign up to be the world's protector for another state, considering the fragile nature of this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which really goes back years, but honestly, probably centuries. So I don't want to see us get entangled in that. However, I understand from Kyiv's position that they want real guarantees of concrete protection to stop any future aggression coming from Putin. Completely understood. So on that note, John, what do you think about the idea of the U.S. at least temporarily shielding Ukraine, and then what do you think should happen in the long term?
Sure. Well, I think that the United States relationship with its NATO allies and the broader, European security umbrella, that goes back many decades, right? And so I whether it's, President Trump leading some of these negotiations, facilitating that, I think more broadly, we should be able to facilitate Europe in taking charge of its own security. But at the end of the day, that comes down to percent of GDP that they're willing to allocate, right? As soon as the second Trump administration started, there was a little bit more tough talk with our NATO allies. And you see these countries, these allies that are capable of being capable for a long time, finally stepping up and taking more charge of European security. So I think that as our allies lean into their capability, they can facilitate some of the security guarantees that maybe Ukraine is looking for. And I think that having the United States, particularly the United States president, being able to facilitate that conversation is very constructive and is also a good way for the United States to look out for its security interests in the region, right? But that doesn't mean being the grand protector of Ukraine.
Okay.
U.S. interests should come first.
Totally understood. And agreed, by the way. So we'll have to see what happens. I will say this. I think President Trump is setting an excellent example for Putin and Zelensky, pushing for peace unequivocally. Whether that includes a ceasefire in the meantime, we'll see. But I wish this administration Godspeed, truly. I don't see what this war is doing for anybody. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to be patient and keep my fingers crossed. And I want to say thank you both to you gentlemen for being here today on the show.
Thanks, Riley.
Thank you.